Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ MV, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
The baddest bitch in the room.
Good morning.
You don't call them bitches.
That's the name of her book, you
I know, but
idiot.
you didn't say that so people don't understand. We have Sophia Chang.
We would have got to that.
All right, want to make sure. You know how this world is right now. We
That
can
is
jump for
very true. That is true.
Well, welcome, the baddest bitch in the room.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
How are you?
doing? Now, how did you get into this industry? Let's
Amazing.
start from there. How did you get into the music industry?
Oh, first, let me answer that question. I'm amazing. Thank you. I'm exhilarated and I'm energized. How did I get into the industry? I first moved here in 1987, and at that time, the hip hop scene was tiny, you guys, and everybody was in the same place. It was a very localized community. So you had DJs, MC, graph artists, b-boys, but you also had the managers, the attorneys, the booking agents, the publicists, the A&R people. So it was a really nice small community, so it was easy for me to get access. I don't know if I could get in the industry today, frankly. It's huge.
very diverse, though. Like, they embrace diversity now.
Now, I would say that they embrace diversity then, too. But I think when I'm talking about Char, it's just the fact that it's so big now.
Gotcha.
Right.
You know.
And you started off as a manager for Wu-Tang, right? Was that your first gig?
That couldn't have been your first gig.
No, my first gig was I did A&R at Jive Records.
Got you.
Yeah.
The Jive Records back then, who did they have? They had Too Short.
Yes.
They had, who else? Who did they have on
They
the
had
East
Too
Coast?
Short, they had E40, they had
E40.
BDP, the UGK, A Tribe Called Quest, Jazzy Jeff and the
Tribe Called
Fresh
Quest,
Prince.
yeah.
Yeah, it was an amazing roster.
So who did you A&R? What
That's
project?
hip-hop.
Yeah, that's hip-hop.
Yeah.
What
it's the
projects did
golden
you
era.
A&R?
So I signed a group called Souls of Mischief. I
Hey.
signed Casual. I signed Fushnikins. I signed a woman named Ms. Kilo, who sadly never came out. And then I worked with the other artists. So I was there. I A&R the Scenario remix, which was incredible. But Sean Karasov, God rest his soul, he signed Tribe.
First of all, I love Fushnikins. And Fushnikins launched the career of Shaquille O'Neal, who also signed the
did.
Jive at one point,
He
didn't he?
did. Oh, that's right. Yes, he
Yeah.
was. Absolutely.
Were you the Can I Rock record? Was that you?
No, I
Okay.
mean, I think by that time I had actually already, I had already left. Yeah, I wasn't there. I wasn't there for very long.
So you signed these artists. You found Social Misfits was from the West Coast, correct?
Yeah, Oakland.
Oakland.
Casuals from Oakland, Ms. Kilos from Cali.
You signed a lot of West Coast artists.
I did. I spent a lot of time in Oakland, 580, 880, Bay Bridge. Yeah, I spent a lot of time out there. I love it out there. I love Oakland.
How did you become the first Asian woman in hip-hop? Is that an actual fact, or that's just...
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, and look, if somebody comes and proves me otherwise, I apologize. But as far as I know, yes, I'm the first Asian woman in hip hop. I think that again, to go back to the point that I was making to Envy, the industry was really small, and it was intimidating for sure. I'm a little Asian woman. I'm Canadian. I'm a French lit major. I don't have a place, so to speak, in hip hop. It's not of my making. You know, and so it was a privilege to be welcomed and embraced by this industry. And I think that a lot of it was how I was received. And it was really an honor that people didn't really question it as much as I questioned it myself. I found it daunting. And Chip Fu from the Fushnikins, I spoke to him recently. He said, you know, Soph, I remember you used to wonder how you could do the job if you would be accepted as an Asian woman in hip hop. And I never understood why you asked yourself that. And that was really interesting because it's been 27 years since I signed Fushnikins, you know, and he remembers that to this day.
And how did you get to Wu-Tang? How did you get to managing Wu-Tang?
So I never actually managed Wu-Tang Clan. I managed all three-letter members. That's a quiz for everybody. ODB, God rest his soul, RZA, RZA, and
Jizza.
thank you very much, of course,
Yes.
you know. So I heard the demo like everybody else did. The Protected, you know, the 3-song
Protect Your
demo
Neck.
was Protect Your Neck, Tears, and Method Man.
Right.
And all of us were like, oh my God, what is this? We've never heard anything like this. But because RZA, as the genius that he is, demanded a non-exclusive deal, which is when a label signs a group, they also have the exclusive option to sign every one of the solo members. RZA asked to get a non-exclusive deal, which nobody was going to allow to happen.
Right.
So we weren't able to
I'm
sign.
sure Loud Records is mad that they did that.
No, I actually think that I hope that Steve would be happy with his decision, because I think it was a really smart decision, because Loud was on the come up at the time.
Right.
And I think Steve made the he made the calculation and said, yes, I may not be able to sign all of them, but Wu-Tang Clan will put me on the map as a label.
Correct.
And when you run a label, your talent can act as your magnet, right? Mm-hmm. So if I've signed Charlamagne, right, there, and everybody else that wants to be on the label looks and says, well, you know what, I think I'm going to go with Sophia because she's got Charlamagne.
His success.
So I think that I actually think that was a smart decision. And so I wasn't able to sign Wu-Tang, but I was like, I have to meet this guy. And then I got the Gravediggers demo. Mm-hmm. Now the Gravediggers was different, and I wanted to sign the Gravediggers. I wasn't able to sign them either, but I set up a meeting with RZA. And I mean, you guys, I remember it to this day. I remember what the weather was like, what I was wearing, where we ate, what I ate.
Tell us all.
I want to know all of that. I need the details.
So the Jive Records offices used to be on 25th Street between 6th and 7th. Mm-hmm. And RZA came, and he was late. What a surprise, a rapper who's late. And we went to the spot on 25th, 21st, and 6th called Locks Around the Clock. I don't know what it is now. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure I ate a burger. I'm pretty sure he ate something much more healthy. And we just talked about so many different things. You know, at first, you talk about the business hand. We're talking about the Gravediggers. You know, it's Prince Paul, it's Raekwon, it's Poetic, God rest his soul. And we kind of go through the business part of it, and then we start talking about Wu-Tang, because I'm geeking out, as you can imagine.
Okay.
But then, you know, and I know that you guys have had conversations with RZA. He is this incredibly complex and intellectually and culturally curious person. Mm-hmm. So in my memoir, I describe it as being able to go through all these chambers with him. And so we had this meal, and when we left, I went north on 6th Avenue, he went south, or maybe the other way around, and I'll never forget, as he's walking away, I thought,
yeah.
Oh, as he's walking away, I thought, that's one of the smartest motherfuckers I've ever met. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of smart motherfuckers. And all of a sudden I hear, Soph. And I turn around and he says, next time lunch is on me. That was in 1993. That's 26 years ago. He hasn't let me pay for a meal since.
Wow.
But I think, you guys, what was so astonishing, because I already understood who he was musically and creatively. But I think the man that came through, and the philosopher, it was what was incredible to me. You know, Shar, I said this, unfortunately it didn't get into the Showtime doc, but one of the points that I made was, I think that RZA is the Bruce Lee of hip hop. And this is what I mean by that. Bruce was an incredible martial artist, but what he did was he took many different styles. And he didn't disrespect those styles. Mm-hmm. He respected those styles. He aggregated them, and he synthesized them into his own style, and he called it Jeet Kune Do. And I think RZA did the same thing musically. And on top of that, he's a philosopher. You know this. Mm-hmm. RZA is a true philosopher, and I don't know of any other artist that I can say that about. There are other artists who are smart, who are erudite, who are intellectually curious. But RZA to me is a true philosopher, and I think that it speaks, I think that you hear that in the music that he produces.
You said Wu-Tang raised you. What did you mean by that?
I always say my name is Sophia Chang, and I was raised by Wu-Tang. And, you know, I've actually been telling RZA for 10 years, if I ever write a book, it's going to be called Raised by Wu-Tang. And a part of that was just knowing that how they embraced me. And as I wrote Shar, it became even clear to me. It's one of the beautiful things about writing a memoir is that you investigate and you interrogate your whole life, but you also get to honor the people who are important to you. Mm-hmm. So what I realized is that ODB, God rest his soul, was the first person to ask me to manage him, which became my career essentially for 30 years. Mm. Method Man was the first person to ever say to me, Soph, you're family. I never heard that before.
That's why he's your whooper hero?
He's my whooper hero, yes, thank you. And RZA was the first to empower me as a general manager. I was a general manager of Razor Sharp Records. So those are really incredible kind of career firsts, right? But I think what was really important to me, going back to your question about being the first Asian woman in hip-hop, is that I did feel a little bit out of place and a little bit uncertain. And even though I had this great community, but when I was introduced to Wu-Tang, they were like this, come here, Soph. And they just put me in their pockets. not only did they do that, they were very demonstrative about it. It was very, very clear to everybody that Soph,
She down with us.
that's exactly
Yeah, don't
right.
fuck with her. She down with us.
Exactly. Like recently, a few years ago, this MC from way back in the day said, you know what, Sophia? You know what, Sophia? I was so in love with you, but I never, ever had the nerve to approach you because of Wu-Tang.
All your brothers.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, how was ODB? Like, you managed him, and I'm sure that was a hard task.
Managing ODB,
Could you manage? Could he be manager?
I think that's the right question. That it was, managing Old Dirty Bastard is a little bit oxymoronic. And it certainly came with its challenges. Look, he was so unpredictable, witty, unpredictable, and he had an addictive personality for sure. And he loved women, and there was a lot of chasing and cajoling, but you deal with all of that because you are dealing with a singular talent. And look, managing talent is not for everybody. You have to have a very specific constitution for that. Like people always say to me, Sophie, I don't know how you do this. But the side of Dirty, I called him A, which is short for Asan, his righteous name. I used to call him A. The side of Asan that people should know about is that he was so smart. I don't know that people really understand that. I know that you guys know that. But he was so incredibly smart, and he was also really sweet and tender and protective and so incredibly loyal. And those are lessons that I got from him for sure.
Now, who do you manage now? Do you still manage artists now?
No, I have to say that for the record. Everybody that's listening, I don't manage talent anymore. Please don't send me your SoundCloud links and your YouTube links.
Tell them your DMs. This morning there was 5 guys outside. Tell them your DMs so they can get in contact with you.
Oh my God, they wanted to rap this morning. They wanted to sing. They didn't care if we had to be in for work. I'm like, this is not a record label.
This is what I'm going to say. I am a 54-year-old woman who has a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old teenager. I don't have my finger on the pulse anymore. That was my job in 1992, 93, 94. I'm not au courant anymore. I don't know everything that's going on. I don't know the difference between all of the different artists. Why? Because I grew out of hip hop.
If more people could admit that, the industry would be in a much better place.
Thank you. I grew out of hip hop, and it's not my job anymore. And that's not me saying current hip hop isn't good. That honestly, Shar, I don't think that's for me to judge. I think of all of the genres of music, if we examine it, hip hop is more youth-based than any other one. It is made for the young, by the young, about the young, and that's a beautiful thing. It's just not for me anymore. So when people ask me opinions on music, the current state of hip hop, I honestly don't have an opinion. And frankly, you shouldn't care about my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm not that person anymore. Back in 92, I would have had all sorts of opinions.
Well, they got to care. And the reason they have to care is because you signed, first of all, artists that sold millions of records. You managed artists that sold millions of records. So they have to ask, what did you hear in that artist? Was it just the music? Did you see that this artist was a star? It's not just...
If you basing it off that, you wouldn't sign nobody from this era.
Well, I mean, if you asked me, what did you see in Fushnikins or what did you see in Souls of Mischief? Yes, I can answer that. But if somebody comes up to me and says, what do you think of any one of these artists on the Rap Caviar playlist? I'm not going to have an educated opinion. And I don't think my opinion is worth, honestly, I just don't think it's worth anything.
That's smart.
Gotcha.
Didn't you have a connection with G Herbo and Joey Badass, though?
I do. So my connection, my connection with G Herbo and Joey Badass was I met Joey in the basement of SOBs years ago. CJ Fly introduced me to Joey, and at this time, he was still a teenager. And we had an immediate kind of spiritual connection and a personal connection. And then I ran Cinematic Records, and you know that Joey and members of Pro Era were on there. That's also the label that G Herbo was signed to. Now, again, I listened to G Herbo's album, and it's not really for me. And we had a conversation about it. And I asked Herbo, I listen to your album and I hear a lot of anger and I hear a lot of stuff. Where does that all come from? And I tell a story, in my memoir about the very first marketing meeting I had at Cinematic Records. And the first person that I asked was this woman, and I said, what's going on with G Herbo? And he was going to come out to LA to perform, all right? So she's a white woman. And she said, and I wish you guys could see this. You can't see it on the radio, but I'll describe it. I said, what's going on with this trip to LA? And she went, he's not going to go to LA until we move his mother out of the hood. And she rolled her eyes.
Wow.
And I remember saying to myself, bitch, you're fired. Now, I knew that I was going to have to fire her because I took that job and I was told you're going to have to fire her when you come in. And of course, I was given that job. But I have to say that after she made that statement, I relished.
You enjoyed it.
No question. No question in my mind. And what was so galling to me, and I really want people to hear this, hip hop came from black folks and brown folks.
Damn right.
If you are a non-black or a now non-brown, and by brown I mean Latinx, person in hip-hop, acknowledge your privilege. I am a yellow girl. I am a middle-class, college-educated Asian woman. I understand that I came to hip-hop with my own privilege. And again, I was embraced and I was taken in. So watching a woman like this smoke blunts, sit up in the VIP, fucking go out on the road and get to stunt and put it on your Instagram that, yo, I'm hanging out with G Herbo and all that. I don't actually care about that, Sharon. Go ahead and do that. But know who the man is.
Word.
Know that there is a heart and a soul and a human being behind those raps. And I asked him, where does this come from? And I said, tell me why you're worried about your mother. And he said, Sophie, I live in a neighborhood. My mother lives in a neighborhood and my little sister in a neighborhood that is not okay and it is not safe. And I don't like to be away from her if she's going to live there. He tells a story that when he was 13, he's walking his 5-year-old little sister to school. She's in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. Do any of you have children?
Yes.
I got 5.
Okay.
I got 3.
Okay. And you remember how little your kids were when they were 5 and how vulnerable. He's only 13. He's walking her to school, and right across the street in an SUV, they both see somebody get shot point blank, like pow. And you can imagine a 5-year-old, how traumatizing would that be? I've never seen that. As a 54-year-old, I would be traumatized. But this is the stunner. He said, Sophie, the amazing thing is, it didn't even faze me. I had already seen so many murders by then. He was 13. And then I understood, okay, this is why you're worried about your mother. But why didn't she ask is my question, Shar, right? So rather than...
care.
That's exactly right, is you don't care. So, Kierna Mayo, when she was the editor-in-chief of Ebony Magazine, she had this amazing cover, and it said, America loves black people. And then she crossed out people, and on top of it, she wrote culture.
Culture. They love our culture. They don't love us.
Right.
Exactly. How can you be in the industry and be making money off of the culture and not love and try and empathize with and understand the people? I find that really, really galling.
What would you say to somebody who accuses you of cultural appropriation as an Asian woman in hip hop?
So fortunately, Shar, and that's a good question, I haven't been accused of that outright. Maybe there are conversations that people have about it. I have, and I've examined that question a lot. I have a very smart friend. His name is Kevin Brynell. He teaches critical race studies at Babson College. And he has this barometer for cultural appropriation. And it's a mnemonic device. It's D. It's DEE. And these are the elements that he looks for: denigration, exploitation, and erasure. And I am confident that if you look at my 32-year history in culture, that I am guilty of none of those things. I mean, I'm constantly saying I was raised by Wu-Tang. I don't think I'm erasing them at all. And the flip side of that is if somebody asks me, is Wu-Tang Clan...
Wu-Tang
right,
committing cultural appropriation.
Right, I would say the same thing. There is nothing that they did that denigrated, erased, or exploited Asian culture.
Why does Asian culture love black culture so much?
Everybody loves black culture.
Yeah, I don't know that I know the answer to that if you're asking specifically about Asians, I don't have an answer to that, but I think that you're right. I think that Black culture is so, people find it so compelling. And for me, for instance, The Message is a song that changed my life. All right? I'm a yellow girl growing up in a white world in Vancouver, so I'm only exposed essentially to top 40 music. So I'm not listening to R&B. I'm not exposed to this incredible tradition. All right. And then I hear The Message. And only in writing my memoir do I realize that the reason that it was so stunning, of course the lyrics, of course the beat, and all of that, was that it was the first time that I had been exposed to art about people of color by people of color. Mm-hmm. So the only time I see myself, guys, as an Asian or an Asian woman is in Hollywood. And that is specifically through the white male lens, right? The only time I'm exposed to Black folks or Latinx folks, same thing, is through the white male lens. So to hear The Message, there's so much agency there, right, Shar? Like, this is who I am. Mm-hmm. This is my world. This is what I go through. And it's so defiant and it's so proud. I just found that so beautiful and so touching.
What did your family think when you were so into hip hop back then? You know, you're from Canada, you're in college, you're in school, and you say, Mom, Dad, I want to do hip hop.
So my mother is an 87-year-old woman who escaped from North Korea at 14. My father, God rest his soul, also had harrowing adventures when he was growing up. They were born in 1931 and 1932. So when I told them that I was in hip-hop, they don't know what hip-hop is, and I describe it to them, and I explain it to them. I have this really distinct memory of going home and taking a cassette and plugging into this little cassette player and playing for my mother and pausing after every line, Streets of New York, by G-Rap, and walking her through what he's saying and explaining to her why I found this art form and this poetry, because I believe hip-hop is poetry.
Absolutely.
And I do believe it is an art form, and I do believe it is music, why I found it so compelling. And I don't think my parents could have been surprised, because I am exactly the girl that they raised. I think, you know, when I think about it, I left Vancouver and I skipped my graduation. I'm the child of Korean immigrants. I skipped graduation because I was in such a rush to get back to New York. And they never, ever pressured me. And I have to say that that's pretty extraordinary for Asian immigrant parents. They never said, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? When are you going to get... I was absolutely supposed to be a French professor. There's no doubt about it. I flagrantly went off the prescribed path. But I think that they believed that I needed to do what I was passionate about. And I'm really grateful to them for that.
You touched on it a little. Did anybody in the Asian community ever think Wu-Tang was appropriating culture? I mean, I know you didn't, but did anybody in the Asian community think that?
I've never heard that.
Okay.
I never read it. I never heard it. And no one ever said it to me. I think that as an Asian, we should be grateful to Wu-Tang, Shar. Mm-hmm. I don't think Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon would be the hit that it was without Wu-Tang Clan.
Wow.
I don't think we would have Rush Hour without Wu-Tang Clan. I think that the RZA and Wu-Tang Clan opened up America's eyes to this incredible genre and this incredible culture. So I'm grateful. Mm-hmm. I'm absolutely grateful.
You had a relationship with Chris Lighty too, right?
I did. Chris Lighty, God rest his soul. How many times are we going to say that? I did. I first met Chris when I worked at Jive because he managed Tribe. And I couldn't stand him, you guys. I mean, you remember Chris. He's big and he's imposing and he's physical and he was intimidating as hell. And he loved that, you know. And he could be really brusque. And I just remember saying to Ali Shaheed Muhammad from A Tribe Called Quest, I can't stand your manager. And he was like, why, Soph? And I was like, he's so arrogant. And he said, you should get to know him. And I did get to know him. And I got past all of that, right, Char? Like, you know what this is, you guys.
Absolutely.
Like, there's the artist, there's a persona, and then some of us sometimes have the privilege of getting behind that when they decide to put that aside. And Chris was my Rock of Gibraltar. Chris was my shelter from the storm. Chris was the person that I called on both occasions when something was great. Oh my God, Chris, blah, 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 blah. And when something was shitty. He would say, come to my office, Soph, and I would sit there and I would wait. and he'd get out of his meeting or he'd get off a call, and I'd go into his office, and I would close the door, and I would tell him what was going on, and then I would just put my head on his shoulder, and I would cry. Now, Chris was not an affectionate guy. He's not the kind of guy to hug me and be like, it's okay, Soph. He's not that guy. He's a laconic guy. He's not saying anything, but he's there for me. And when he died, you guys, it definitely took a piece of me. There's definitely part of my confidence that left me. And the other night at the party, you know, D Nice pulled me over and he said, Chris should be here. You know, and I know that he was there in some way, but he should have been there.
Yeah.
Is there any artist that you had an opportunity to manage that you was like, nah, I'm not doing it?
Oh, so many.
And that became a huge success?
Yeah, I mean.
Like who?
So if I remember correctly, when I worked at Jive, I think Common wrote me a handwritten letter and wanted me to sign him, and I didn't sign him, oversight. And he became huge. But I will say this, Envy. I don't, as a life philosophy, I don't live with regrets. So I don't go, oh, that's the one that got away.
That was a bad one, right?
You know, I mean, because for me, whether good or bad, all of the experiences that I go through, and there are a lot of shitty ones, failures, mistakes, getting fired, humiliations, what I do is I sit back and I go, what was my agency in that? Because I'm not a victim, all right? I mean, unless, God forbid, something like flies out of the air and hits me, I'm not a victim. It takes two to tango. I always have agency in any situation. So I sit back and I analyze what my behavior was, what I could have done better, and I learn a lesson. And if I learn a lesson, it's a gift. And if it's a gift, how can I regret it?
Word.
I was working with Angela Yee. Did you work with Angela Yee at Wu-Tang?
At Razor Sharp.
How was that?
She was the worst. No, I mean,
I believe you.
Oh, stop it. I adore Angela.
Did you cast her in the video? Because she was in a Wu-Tang video.
Was she in a Wu-Tang video?
Wu-Tang, motherfucker. Reunited, I think it was.
Angela was incredible. She was super, super hardworking. She was really focused, but she was also really lovely to be around. I mean, we are in a very social business. You know, we're constantly socializing, not just here, but tonight, into the late nights. We're having dinners and everything. And Angela had that really amazing combination of being fastidious and disciplined and focused, but also being really great with people and even more importantly with artists. And not everybody has that gift.
You took RZA to the Shaolin Temple, right? In the Wu-Tang Mountains?
Yeah. So
What was that like?
in 1999, I organized this tour. I was pregnant with my first child. I organized this tour of 50 students and disciples to go to Shaolin Temple in Wu-Tang Mountain. And he missed the flight. And you can imagine how stressful that was because it wasn't like a flight to LA. You're going to be on another plane in an hour, half an hour. And, you know, it's China. So he wasn't going to get on a plane until the next day. It was really, really stressful. But of course he got there. He was now the Shaolin Temple, for those of you who don't know, it's over 1,500 years old. It is the founding place of Chan Buddhism, and it is the mecca of martial arts. It's the ultimate. And as you know, Wu-Tang Clan grew up in Staten Island. They call their home borough Shaolin. So he goes there, and he performs at the gate of the Shaolin Temple. Now, I've seen this gate and these doors, Shar, in so many movies. These beautiful big red doors. And RZA's standing there, and my ex, Shi Yanming, a 34th generation Shaolin monk. His best friend at Shaolin Temple is Shi De-young, a 32nd generation Shaolin monk. And his friends, disciples, created a human chain. So they're all holding hands like this. And they literally create a human chain around RZA. And he stands there and he performs. And he's rapping a cappella. And he does this freestyle. And it was so beautiful because he wasn't an MC in that moment to me. He was an artist. He was a hip hop artist and he was a martial artist. And I thought, you know what, Sophia Chang? You created this piece of history. And then to go to Wu-Tang Mountain with him. So Shaolin Temple at the time, I don't know what it's like now because I haven't been back there in a long time, was a massive, not the temple itself, but around it was a huge tourist trap. You've got noodle stands, you've got souvenir stores, you've got all sorts of other little kung fu schools. But Wu-Tang, nobody was going to Wu-Tang. So we take this insanely long journey, buses, trains, automobiles, right? to Wu-Tang Mountain, it is a mile-high mountain. And it's called the Temple of the Purple Cloud. And actually, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, a lot of it was shot at this temple on this mountain. And you get out there, and it is really like being in a movie set. And we get out there, we get off of the bus, and we're so tired, and we're all, jumbled up from being on this really bumpy drive. And we stand out there, and it's blue skies. And RZA's standing there, and I'm watching RZA. So more profound to me than my experience, Shar, is watching him. And he stands there, and he turns around, and he looks at me, and he says, Soph, get the camera, take a picture. And I said, why? And he said, look at the mountain behind me. I look at the mountain, and I was like, yeah, it's beautiful. And he said, no, Soph, it's a W. And swear to God, the mountains are shaped like a W.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what? He's arrived. And in that moment, if anybody could have seen him in that moment, nobody could accuse him of cultural appropriation.
Wow.
They definitely got to read the book, man.
Yeah,
This
is my final question. Why the hell didn't you name the audiobook Raised by Wu-Tang? How did you get to the baddest bitch in the room?
Thank you for asking. Because I think after I wrote the book, Shar, I realized that there's a lot more to my life than Wu-Tang Clan. And I think they would say the same thing. I think that saying raised by Wu-Tang, I am still raised by Wu-Tang. I will never deny that. But it almost gives me a crutch. Do you understand? In other words, this audiobook is very much Sophia Chang's journey.
Gotcha.
This is very much about how I arrived here. And they were part of it, but so were many other people. And the other thing about the title, Shar, is that I'm a 54-year-old Korean Canadian single mother of 2 grown teenagers. And I am out here raising hell. I am pounding my fist on the table. I am dating whoever I want. And I am calling myself, in no uncertain terms, announcing to the world that I am the baddest bitch in the room. That's fucking radical.
Or,
So it made a different statement. Does that make sense?
yeah, total sense.
Well, definitely go check out the book, The
Yeah,
Baddest
go get
Bitch
it.
in the Room.
Wherever you buy audiobooks.
That's right. Sophia Chang.
Sophia Chang, thank you for
so
coming.
much
Give me your
for joining
Twitters and
us.
Instagrams and all that
Thank
good
you.
stuff.
Oh, please. Okay. Twitter is @Soph Chang, SOPHCHANG. And my Insta is @Soph Chang NYC, SOPHCHANG Please follow me because that's really where I put a lot of my content. And I have to shout out Eric Holder. You guys, I walked in here and I looked through the glass and I was like, oh my God, Eric Holder's here. I totally geeked out and I introduced myself to his security and I said, are you a security? One of them was Asian, by the way. I was very happy. And I said, I just want you to know that I want to take a picture with your boy. And they were like, totally. And he was so gracious. So I'm honored to be here the same day as AG Eric Holder. Thank you so much for having me,
Thank you
you
so
guys.
much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
It's The Breakfast Club. Good morning.